Hi, so we are moving away from the beginning speeches where you were responsible for knowing the information, where you're talking about things that you already knew, into the researched speeches. So this video, I'm going to walk you through some of the library resources and talk a little bit about the kinds of research that I expect that you'll accomplish for your informative and persuasive speech. So remember, your informative and persuasive speech is on the same topic. It's on a controversial contemporary policy. That topic has to be approved. So if you have yet to get your topic approved, that is really where you need to start and have that done ASAP, because you can't move forward with your research and complete the assignments for this week until that topic has been approved. So because we're focusing on something that's contemporary, we're going to focus our research on what we would find in the databases. So you aren't going to use the library catalog because you aren't going to be using textbooks, well, obviously not textbooks, but books generally, and you aren't going to be using, for the most part, scholarly articles, and we'll talk a little bit about the difference between that and the other kinds of articles that you'll find, which mostly focuses on newspapers, magazines, and other kinds of news sources, and that's really where you're going to focus your research for this assignment. So this is the library homepage. So if you just go to the Golden West Library, this is what you'll see. And we're going to go through the databases, and that's where we're going to focus our search. So if you are away from campus, it will take you between here and there into a login page that will show you how to access this stuff. But for now, this is what you'll see. So here are the databases that the library has access to. And the databases are simply curated sources of information. So the databases don't produce the information. They simply take the information that exists out in the world from different sources and they make it available to you. So you can expect that what you find there is credible. Not perfect, but credible. So you'll see that initially they're listed alphabetically. So if you know what database you want, you could just go to it alphabetically. But for most of you, you're going to go here to the subjects, and you will notice that controversial topics is a specific subject that you can research. And these ones that pop up in the best bets, and then actually happens because of the alphabetical, academic search complete. These are really your best sources of information. So these are where you're really going to focus your attention in terms of your research. So if you go into something like opposing viewpoints, which I really recommend as a starting point because it's a two-sided, it looks at both sides of these kinds of issues, it will be a great place for you to start. So here you will see you can explore topics. So some of you may be focusing on animal experimentation. That would be an easy way for you to start by exploring this topic right here, and it will take you into the different ways, the different kinds of material that it has. So as I sort of mentioned before, you don't really need to focus your attention on academic journals. They are great sources of information, but academic journals are meant for people within the discipline, so other experts in the field. They're not very accessible to the lay audience, and they're lengthy. There's no reason that you need to do that kind of research for a 6 and 8 minute speech. So instead, you could focus over here on feature viewpoints, and as you can see, these are news sources. So this one happens to be from the New York Times. So if you click on that, then you'll have access to this news article. And that's really what you want to be focusing your attention on, right? So here is the article in its entirety. So you have access to all of that. It gives you the source citation, which is also very helpful. If you're utilizing this for your own research, over here you can print or email the article, or you can download it directly. All of these things are very helpful for you as you're compiling your research. So that's the main way you should be doing the kinds of research that you need for your informative and persuasive speech. For your informative speech, you need a minimum of 6 sources. So this would count as one source. And if you look at the outline template, you'll see you have 2 main points, right? So it's a should or should not. So if you were doing animal experimentation, main point 1 would be we should ban animal experimentation for medical purposes or cosmetic purposes, whatever you're focusing on. main point 2 would be we should not ban medical testing or animal testing for whatever purpose. And then underneath there, you have 3 subpoints. Those subpoints need to be the specific arguments for why we should or should not. So in this case, just by looking at this article, the fact that animals are put in danger or subjected to cruel and unnecessary treatment and ultimately could die might be one argument for why we should eliminate or ban that testing, and then you would simply cite this source to help support it. And in here you'll find the data, the examples, the stories. That's really what makes up the sort of the depth, the body of your speech. So you need 6 sources. This would be one of those sources. So for most of you, I recommend staying in the databases because the databases help you answer the question of credibility very easily. Oops, I'm going backwards, but we really need to go here. So I just wanted to show you the other one in terms of that I recommend is Academic Search Elite because it's really going to focus on all of the, it has all of the major news sources. So if you search for the information here, it's going to pull up almost 6,000. So a lot of different information. Now this one also is including some law reviews you might see here. Again, you're welcome to, but I don't recommend necessarily that you go that route. You don't need to go that route. So you would find some that. And now over here you can also eliminate that. So you could click on newspapers and magazines, and that would limit the search to those kinds of things. Okay? So this is really where you should be focusing your research on. The last thing that I wanted to talk about generally is that if you find yourself needing to use the internet more generally, so outside of the library system, then one thing I wanted to direct your attention to was that when you search Google, your default is all, but you can click on news as an option, and that is really going to limit what you see to news sources, and that I think is a better way to do that. So one of the other expectations you have in the outline for this assignment is that you have to explain why the sources that you are using are credible. That's going to be very easy if you stick to the databases. In the databases, the database does the curating for you. That's literally all you would have to say. This article comes from this database in your bibliography, and that would demonstrate that it's credible. So you would simply say, I found this article on SIRS, and that's all you need to do. If you're out in the land of the internet, then you're going to have to do a little bit more work to explain that. So this first article is from NPR. In my heart of hearts, I hope you're familiar with NPR. So NPR is National Public Radio. If you're not familiar, when you click on an article like this and you scroll to the very, very bottom, you will find some version of an About Us. And you can see here, so NPR is an independent nonprofit media organization. They're on the radio, so that's mostly where they access it, but then clearly they publish their material online as well. So that would be your argument for why it is a credible source. But if you are not using a major news source, right? So if you are just out here on the internet, then you have a much higher threshold to explain why these sources are credible. So just because it says .org does not mean that it is credible. Anyone can access a .org website, right? So you're going to have to do the work to explain why a website is credible. And that's really, I think, the hardest source to demonstrate credibility. It doesn't mean it's impossible, but it is the hardest. So in order of research, start with the databases. If you have to use Google News, and then at the sort of last resort, and really I think you just should not be using, you would just search the internet because all that's going to do is to pull up sources that are questionable in terms of source credibility. So remember, you have to demonstrate your source credibility or explain your source credibility in your discussion post for this week. And then it also goes in your bibliography for your outline. So I hope that helps. get you started in terms of the kinds of research that you're going to do. So if you have any other questions, you can always reach out, or if you're just generally having trouble finding things, please let me know. Otherwise, I wish you the best as you search.